About 20 minutes from my hometown is a large resort that has just about anything you can think of. It gets most of its use because the resort is probably the largest casino within a 60-mile radius. It's so much more than just a casino, though. It has a spa, dozens of suites for weddings and honeymoons, a massive hall for concerts and shows, and I even saw an episode of WWE SmackDown there when I was about 12 years old. That resort truly has everything. Back in 2019, I was pleasantly surprised to see the resort would be hosting this video game convention. They had just recently built a brand new convention center, and I was pretty excited to check it out. I'd always been an avid gamer myself, but I never thought I would be able to attend a convention so close to home. The tickets were a bit pricey, but my friend's dad was a manager at the resort, so I was able to get 2 for a super cheap price. When it came time for the convention, though, my friend bailed and nobody else could really go with me. I ended up having to attend all by myself. I was a bit bummed out at first, but once I got there and saw everything going on, I was instantly in a better mood. All the major systems were on display, new game trailers were being announced. Honestly, since this wasn't one of the major gaming conventions though, there wasn't anything super newsworthy going on. It was mostly just gaming memorabilia and mega fans sharing their love for gaming. While I was walking around meeting people, most notably Charles Martinet, the man who voices Mario, I met a different guy named Chuck. He was alone, and we seemed to kind of click right away. At first, he didn't quite seem like he belonged to this crowd. He was wearing a suit and had his hair greased back. Everyone else was wearing casual wear like t-shirts and jeans, or cosplaying their favorite characters. Not this guy, though. Honestly, I thought he worked at the resort, or was maybe some sort of gaming executive or something. Turns out he was just a regular old gamer like me. I told myself you can't always judge a book by its cover. We spent hours talking and ended up hitting all the booths at the convention. We even saw one of the guest speakers. At around 11, we decided to grab some food, since the casino was 24 hours. They had a few good options there that served food all night long. We grabbed a burger, some fries, then headed up to the bar inside the casino. I'm not sure if it was because of the convention or the atmosphere in the bar itself, but after a few drinks, I was starting to feel it a little bit. I told Chuck I was going to call it a night. We exchanged numbers, and I told him that we would definitely hang out again soon. I really meant it too. Prior to the convention coming to town, I'd had the foresight to book a room in the resort. I didn't want to drive home so late. And I thought maybe I would go to the casino after the convention too. I knew myself well and knew if I did go to the casino, I would probably drink. I made my way to the room and started getting myself ready for bed. I was actually really exhausted. At this point of the night, it was probably closing in on around 3 in the morning. I was so tired I didn't even turn on the TV or pull out my phone to listen to music or anything. I just climbed into bed and closed my eyes. I started to drift in and out of consciousness when I thought I could hear something coming from the corner of the room where the door was. I slowly roused myself from bed, and I could see the outline of 2 feet from underneath the door. I kept off all the lights in my room so I could see the light illuminating them from underneath. While I was staring at the feet of the obvious figure behind my door, my mind started to race. The first and really only thing that came to mind was that it might be someone from the bar who was drunk, clearly at the wrong door or the wrong room. While I was staring, I noticed that whoever it was outside started to jostle the doorknob. It wasn't just a little jiggle either. This person was aggressively trying to open the door. I was admittedly a bit freaked out at this point. I slowly approached the door so I could look out through the peephole. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was him, Chuck, standing right outside my room. He kept looking back and forth, kind of mumbling to himself, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was still wearing that suit from earlier, but now he had a baseball cap covering his face. For some reason, I was trying to be quiet and contemplate what to do without bringing attention to myself. This was clearly sketchy, and I had no idea what was happening. Then it hit me. I'd never told Chuck I was staying at the hotel, let alone what room I was staying in. While I was leaning against the wall, I heard a loud bang. I looked through the hole. Now Chuck was shoulder checking the door, looking both ways after each thud into the door. Finally, he just appeared to give up altogether. When I looked through the hole again, he was gone, at least out of sight where I couldn't see him. I called the front desk and alerted them to what was going on. They took the liberty of calling the police. While I was waiting for the cops, I noticed a note had been slipped underneath my door. I'd never heard it, so I had no idea when it had actually come through. All that was written on it was, "Pleasure to have met you. Too bad the door was locked tonight, huh?" It was signed with just the letter C. I told the police everything, and even gave them the number Chuck had given me, but I guess the number wasn't real. The hotel checked the cameras, and they clearly had footage of a man in a suit on my floor, going back and forth, knocking on my door, but that was about it. They weren't able to see where he went. Given the timestamp of the security footage, he appeared to have left the note under the door while I was on the phone with the front desk. They saw him leaving the hotel on camera around 4:30 in the morning, and that was the last anyone ever saw of Chuck. I haven't returned to that resort or convention center since that night in 2019. For obvious reasons, I'd never want to go back really. To this day, I still wonder about Chuck. I wonder if he's out there causing trouble for other people. I cringe when I think about what he could have possibly wanted that night. I'm so thankful I always remember to lock my doors. The ones we consider friends can just as easily turn out to be monsters. I work as a night janitor at the local high school. I would 95% of the time be the only one working the night shift. There wasn't really a need for more than one person anyways. I would always start with the downstairs classrooms, then work my way to the upstairs. The cafeteria, gym, auditorium, nurse's office, those were all the responsibilities of the morning and afternoon guys. Since I always worked alone, I would usually have a radio set up in the hallways, playing loud music. It was the very same on the night this happened. The upstairs of the school was shaped like a U rather than an O, so to go around to the other side, there was only one way. I was mopping the floor in one of the classrooms when I noticed from all the way across the other side of the school, one of the lights in the classrooms turned on. I knew that I hadn't left it on myself. I always shut the lights off to any room I wasn't in. I stood there with chills running down my body. I saw someone clearly walking over to the window. They stopped and stared straight over at me, across the pathway. It was the most disturbing experience I ever had. I didn't know what to do. Should I run away? Should I confront them? Should I call the police? I leaned in closer to the window. The person looking at me looked to be in their 30s or 40s. They slowly raised their hand and began waving at me. I pulled the curtains to the classroom shut and then tried to catch my breath. When I pulled them open slightly to look again, the light to the classroom across the school was now off. My heart began to pound. I was sure this person was making their way over to me at that very moment. The option to run seemed best, so I ran out into the hallway and down the stairs to the back door of the school. I didn't care about anything at that moment except my life. The security cameras in the school later revealed that sometime in the middle of the night, the man had emerged from the school's basement and started wandering around the property. I got a closer look at the man's face, and it was quite disturbing. He was not a normal-looking man. The scariest part was watching him go back down into the basement though, and then never coming out again. They tried to investigate and find him down there, but as far as I know, his location was never discovered. I was the lone recreation ranger in a small district in southern Idaho. Nearest town from the guard station was about 1.5 hours away. After moving into the guard station, solar power was not working, and I hadn't slept for about a month due to various factors. The woods there always had this eerie feeling to them, unlike the southwest ponderosa forest that I was used to. About 2 months into this seasonal job, I started to hear something walking and scratching on the deck at night. Now, this district was known for its badgers and beavers, so I didn't really think much of it. When leaving the cabin at night, though, I always had this eerie feeling like I was being watched. One night, I was returning from my grocery run when I got an intensely bad feeling. At the time, I didn't have my shotgun in my vehicle. After stepping out, I looked to the right of the cabin. About 50 feet from my front door, all I could see were 2 eyes, about 3.5 to 4 feet in the air. To say I was freaked out was an understatement. I started yelling to get the hell out of there, but the eyes only crouched down and inched closer to me. I tossed a piece of firewood at that general area. Whoever this was leapt back a bit, but did not make a sound. I tossed 4 or 5 more pieces. Whoever this was still inching forward. At this point, I fumbled with my keys. Of course, the solar power was out as usual. I managed to get inside the cabin and grab my shotgun. And technically, you're not supposed to have guns inside your government housing. But who lives in the Hills Have Eyes backcountry and does not carry? I went outside, but I still couldn't get a good look, even with my headlamp on. I made sure the shotgun was loaded and continued to throw pieces of wood at this person with one hand. Finally, whoever it was harassing me walked back into the brush. That night, I drank about 4 IPAs, and I slept with my shotgun close by. In the morning, the trail crew came up, and we found mountain lion tracks all over the porch, the rocking bench, and the compound leading back to the creek. After that event, I always heard the rocking chair move and someone walking on the porch, but I never did find the tracks again after. Considering it was always muddy up there, it was a bit weird to not ever find any tracks. I've been stalked by mountain lions before and never had an eerie feeling like I did that night. Makes me think that maybe those tracks were a coincidence. And what I really experienced that night was the person actually harassing me. This experience happened to me in Fort Worth, Texas, in the year 2003, when I was still a sophomore in high school. Me, my brother Chris, and a friend of ours, who for the sake of this story I'll call Robert, were all really bored one day in the fall. We decided to go explore this tunnel that led into the sewers. We'd found it under a bridge. It was just because we had nothing better to do that day that we did this. It was sort of a last-minute kind of thing. Not very much planning or thought was put into it. Anyway, this is how I remember things happening all these years later. My brother Chris had invited our friend Robert over after school. We wanted to do something different this time, aside from just sitting around and playing video games. We all suggested we go outside and go walking in the field behind our house. As we did that, we descended across the street beyond the field, where there was a pretty busy street with traffic throughout the day. After jaywalking across, we walked towards the bridge underpass. We carefully walked down to the swamp under the bridge, trying not to slip and slide into the filthy-looking water below. We saw tons of graffiti down there, and then we discovered a tunnel opening. It led to the sewers. We thought to ourselves, why not go exploring? We thought it would be safe as a trio. My brother Chris entered first, me being in the middle, and Robert bringing up the rear of the tunnel. It wasn't wide enough for us to walk side by side. It was so narrow we had to walk in a single file straight line. We used the lights on our cell phones to light the way. Now, let me clarify, this was before smartphones and iPhones and things like that. So the lights from our cell phone screens were all we had to navigate this area. We did have some light peeking through from outside the sewer grates above us, but it really wasn't enough to make much a difference. We traveled at a reasonable pace, seeing a lot of graffiti on both sides of us. As we walked in further, though, nothing out of the ordinary occurred. As we made our way down, we could hear cars passing by on the street above us. Everything sounded and looked okay for the most part. Then we got to the end of the tunnel. It led into a room with a sewer manhole with the lid closed, and two more tunnel openings, one on the left and the other on the right. Now, you would expect this room to be covered in graffiti too, but strangely enough, only 3 words were spray painted in white: wrong way. It was at this point we all started to feel a bit on edge, as if someone was concealed by the surrounding darkness and was watching us. We immediately started hearing sounds from the other tunnels. There came what sounded like a torrent of voices crying out in agony, along with loud stomping footsteps, as if someone in boots was making their way towards us. The horrific sounds emanating from the tunnels were distorted and bounced off the walls around us. It kind of reminded me of the scene in Haunting of Hell House, where the 2 leads of the movie started hearing footsteps of a ghost before it started pounding on their bedroom door. We all immediately turned around and ran back the way we came from. As before, Chris was in front, I was in the middle, and Robert was at the rear. We were all terrified that someone was right behind us. The relentless footsteps picked up their pace. I remember Robert was kind of pushing and shoving me. He was probably the most terrified, seeing as he was at the very back. As we ran, the hellish torrent of echoing voices seemed to intensify. Then, whoever was behind us stopped screaming all at once. We shot out of the opening of the tunnel and immediately made our way back to the top of the bridge, never looking back. As soon as we felt we were safe, we finally stopped to catch our breath. Then we talked about what happened for hours. I came to the conclusion that it was probably some homeless people living down there. They probably thought they were going to be discovered and set off to scare us. The only way they really could. The ominous graffiti sign of wrong way was probably put up as a warning to stay away. Regardless of what happened though, we never did anything like that again. I've not been to that sewer tunnel since, nor do I ever plan to. I've never told this story to anyone at all. You young kids out there who are bored and want to find something to do for yourself, do yourself a favor and stay away from the sewers. You never know what you're going to find or hear down there. This happened back when I was a college student. During that time, I shared a house with a roommate named Stephanie, and we each had our own bedroom. When I was in college, I used the Snapchat app on a daily basis. Quite a few of my friends are on Snapchat, not just from college, but from high school and other places as well. I snap with quite a few of them regularly. One night, though, I got added by someone new on Snapchat. When I looked at the username, I didn't know who it was. I could see it was a guy, and I thought possibly it might have been someone I went to school with or something. Maybe I had met him at some point in time or something like that. I had been in college for a couple of years, and I had met loads of people in my time there. I added the user back, seeing that his Bitmoji was a pretty typical looking guy. Not long after this, I received a snap from him. I opened it, curious as to who this guy was. and what he was sending me. It was just a blank picture of nothing really. It seemed to be all black. I wondered why he had sent me this. I opened it and didn't respond at all. A couple of hours went by. Now it was a little bit later at night. My roommate Stephanie was gone, and I was at home all by myself. I was in my bedroom doing some homework, planning on going to bed soon, when I received another message from the same guy. Just like before, it was another picture. This time when I opened it up though, the picture looked like it was of my house. The picture was taken from my street. When I saw this, I wondered how this person could be there. How could they know this was my house? I sent a chat to this guy and asked him what he was doing. He opened it but didn't immediately reply. I went over to my bedroom window, which was covered, and lifted the blinds slightly to look outside. When I did, I didn't see anything out there. Now, I couldn't see the whole street from my window, of course, but I could see a good chunk of it. I was hoping that maybe this person was just walking by. Maybe this was one of my friends who actually knew me and was playing a joke on me. It seemed pretty unlikely for that to be the case, though. Hopefully the guy was gone by now. About 5 minutes or so had gone by, and I had gone back to my homework. I was just about finishing when I got another message from the same guy. This time, though, it was not a picture at all. It was an actual chat. "Open your front door." I got up and left my bedroom. I carefully walked over to the living room and looked out the window that had a view of the front step. I saw a man standing there, right outside the front door. From where I was, I couldn't see the guy's face. I could only see up to his shoulders, so I really didn't know who he was. This clearly didn't appear to be anybody I recognized, though, so I had no plans to open the door for him. I responded by asking who he was. He didn't reply. I threatened to call the police. I told him if he didn't leave or tell me who he was, I would call them right now. He opened that message but didn't respond to it either. I watched him continue to stand at the front step. Then, after about a minute, I saw him leave and go to the left. He was walking out of my line of sight. I hoped and assumed that he was leaving. I went to another window though and looked out in the direction he went to make sure. I didn't see anything though. This probably meant he was gone now. For the next several minutes, I went around the house and looked out just about every side of it, but I could not find the guy anywhere. This made me feel a bit better. I figured he must have given up and gone home. I went back to my bedroom. I should have gone to sleep right then, but I wasn't that tired anymore, as you might imagine. It wasn't all that late either. I was done studying though. I locked myself up in my room and turned on my TV. About an hour later, I felt my phone vibrate next to me. I picked it up and saw yet another message from that same guy. At first, I didn't want to open it, but ultimately I decided to do it. It was another picture. After opening it, I saw it was a close-up of my bedroom window. I looked over to the window, but I couldn't see out of it at all because of the thick blinds I had. I then heard someone begin knocking on the window from outside. At this point, I took my phone and dialed 911. I couldn't take this anymore. I ran out of my bedroom and into the bathroom down the hallway. I locked the door and waited for the police to arrive. In the meantime, I blocked his account on Snapchat. I did not want to receive any more messages from him. When I was inside the bathroom, I didn't hear anything else after blocking the guy. He wouldn't be able to contact me anyway, and I didn't hear any noises from the window or anything. I was totally isolated. I had no idea what was going on out there. I just hoped he wouldn't try to break into the house or anything. Eventually, the cops got there. It was only then that I finally left the bathroom. They told me they'd found the man hiding in the backyard. He was a guy I didn't recognize at all. I'm not sure how he knew me or how he even got my Snapchat in the first place. I guess I'd accidentally left my location on through Snap Maps though, which is how he found out where I lived. Since this incident, I only accept friends if I actually know them and who they are. I used to work as a 911 dispatcher in a relatively large metro area. One night, at around 3 a.m. or so, I got a call from an elderly lady. She said she wasn't feeling so good. I tried to get more info about what was wrong. Chest pain, trouble breathing, headache? Was she a diabetic? All she did was give me her address and phone number. She said no one else was home, but the front door was unlocked so they could come right in. I sent the call out as a general illness and kept trying to get more details. No matter what else I asked about what was wrong though, all she would say was that she didn't feel good. Could we please send someone to help her? After a few minutes, she said, "I'm gonna put the phone down for a minute. I need to go to the bathroom." I tried to get her to stay on the line with me. Told her she could do whatever she needs to get ready, but I'd like to be able to stay in contact, just in case there was a further problem. She just kept repeating that she was going to put the phone down and be just a minute. And that was it. I heard the phone being set down. I stayed on the line and asked for her every so often, but I got no further reply. A couple of minutes passed by, and then the fire department called on scene. I disconnected and didn't really think much further about it. I told them that the caller had left the front door unlocked and she was in the bathroom. A couple of more minutes passed by, and one of the firefighters called over the air with a weird tone. Exactly how was this call received? I told them the call was first party from the patient's home phone, approximately 8 minutes ago. He didn't respond over the air, but called the desk from his cell phone. Over the phone, he said, "Are you sure this was not a third-party call from a family member or something?" I said negative. Caller advised they didn't feel good and said nobody else was home. To the best of my knowledge, the caller was the patient. "Have you made contact?" He responded and said, "Yeah, she was in the bathroom just like you said, but she's been dead for 12 hours or more, cold to the touch, fully rigor mortis. We're gonna need a deputy out here." Afterwards, we pulled the tapes of the radio and phone calls and checked the timestamps, the address, the phone number. We went over everything again a few times to see if I'd missed something. I called back the next morning after shift to see if they had any more information, but they were just as weirded out as we were. The phone was still in the living room, and the patient was dead in the bathroom. I'm currently a freshman in college. One of my close friends in one of my classes is on the soccer team and heard this story. It is secondhand, but there's too much evidence and corroboration for it to have been completely fabricated. My friend was close with this guy on the soccer team who recently went on a Tinder date with a junior at a college near us. She's from around Boston and commutes to her school. He matched with her on Tinder and took her out to dinner. They were having a good time and getting to talking about their lives and such on the date. She told him about another date she had recently been on that left her with a bad feeling. She'd matched with a normal-looking guy on Tinder from the area and agreed to meet up after talking for a while. They went to a restaurant to get dinner, and they had planned to go to a pretty popular bar near there for drinks afterward. She got a bad feeling by the end of the dinner, though, and the bar journey didn't end up happening. Apparently, it wasn't anything too bad. She could just tell he was a bit strange and not really her type. She gave him an excuse and went home. Their texts were even normal afterwards. She chalked it up to just a bad date. A couple days later, she met up with the aforementioned soccer guy from the beginning of this story. They really hit it off. Her parents left a few days after that for a trip, which she told the soccer guy about. The date had gone really well, and he planned on going over at some point to spend some time with her. The first night that her parents were gone, she woke up to a noise in the kitchen. Her room was on the second floor. The kitchen was on the ground floor. There was a basement underneath that. She thought she heard something and freaked out badly enough that she called her parents. They told her everything's fine, you're probably just hearing things because it's an old house. Don't worry. Realistically, I think that would have been anyone's reaction, myself included. The second day they were gone, she was upstairs. She heard a noise from the TV room behind the kitchen. They didn't have any pets, and these were the types of noises that you would make when you were getting up from what you were doing. She described to our mutual friend as feeling like if she had gone downstairs at that moment, something really bad would have happened. She called her parents again, and they said the same thing as yesterday. She got up the nerve to go downstairs and check for herself. Everything was looking normal. Nothing was moved, nothing was knocked over, the alarm records didn't show any doors or windows opening. She figured she was just freaking out over nothing. On the third day, everything was fine. No noises at all, no cause for concern. Our mutual friend was going to go over there, but had a midterm and couldn't make it that evening. The girl was watching her TV in her room when she heard a noise somewhere downstairs again. This time, though, it was not something she could ignore. All of her adrenaline was firing. She called the cops without asking her parents this time. They basically said the same thing as her parents, though. Since you just heard a noise, we'll try to have someone come check out in around an hour or so. About 10 minutes later, though, to her surprise, a cop car shot into her driveway. They rushed out to the house. She was watching this from an upstairs window. The cops threw the front door open and immediately fanned out, sprinting through every room in the house and checking them. One of them tried the basement door, but it was locked from the inside. They broke down the flimsy door and rushed down into the basement, where they found her previous Tinder date. He had completely covered one part of the room in some kind of heavy plastic tarp. He had a bag of heavy-duty butchering knives with him. The cops immediately arrested him and took him away. She was told by the cops that after she'd called, they heard a second phone pick up the line. When she hung up the phone, they could hear his breathing clearly, and then a little laugh and click as he hung up. The mutual friend heard about all of this after the fact. The thing that really gets me is the part about the cops hearing him on the phone. When I was 16 in the mid-90s, I got into a fight with an acquaintance while a whole bunch of us were hanging out at his house. It was a stupid fight. I can't even remember what it was about, really. I decided, though, man, screw this, I'm walking home. I lived about 5 miles away, but I didn't have a car, and since it was 2 a.m., there were no buses. I had to walk all the way home. In hindsight, my friends either didn't believe I really was going to do this, or were too startled by the sudden argument to realize what I was doing. I left the house all on my own and started walking. About a mile out of the suburban housing neighborhood, it melded into a main street with highway access. It was at this point of the walk I started to notice a gray minivan was following me. It would follow me, pass me, turn a corner, then about 3 blocks later, it would reappear and do the same thing. It was very obvious it was following me. I crossed over to the other side of the street, so I was walking opposite the traffic flow, and thus no car could come up behind me. The van kept doing it on the other side of the street, though. About a mile later, there was a 24-hour grocery store with the lights on. The parking lot was empty, though. I immediately crossed the lot and went to go inside. Just before I got to the doors, the minivan that had been following me pulled up into one of the parking spots. A man called out from the driver's side. "Hey, I don't need you to walk over here, just stay there and listen. I just wanted to let you know I wasn't following you. I saw you walking a while back, but there was this weird guy behind you hiding in the bushes and stuff a couple of times. When you stopped, he got real close to you, so when I saw that, I started to follow you. Sorry if I scared you. I just wanted to make sure you were safe." Go inside and call someone to come pick you up. I haven't seen him since you crossed the street, but I want you to be safe." The man waited until I was inside the store safely, then pulled away. I didn't have anyone to call, so I let the night cashier know what was going on. I hung out with her for about an hour, then I was forced to leave. I've never forgotten that incident. Or that man, whoever he was. During the walk, I never noticed anyone else following me, but I've never been more terrified walking alone at night. I feel very confident that random Samaritan saved my life that night. My creepy neighbor is obsessed with my 25-year-old daughter. Me and my husband and daughter moved into the house next door only a month ago. The man never seemed that interested in talking to me. That was until he noticed her, and it's really worrying me. When we were outside working on a flower bed that faced his house, he suddenly came over to talk. He's done this twice now, mind you. Being completely honest though, it didn't really seem that weird to me at first. That was until he started acting kind of strangely when he noticed my daughter. He got all wide-eyed and started acting real nervous. I didn't realize what was going on until I noticed he kept on staring at her while talking to me. He was very flustered and hardly ever looked away. He didn't blink either. It started to make me a bit uncomfortable. I told my daughter to go back inside. She'd helped me enough with the flower bed already. I didn't like how this guy was acting. I could tell he was starting to creep her out too. After that, there were multiple incidences where she would go outside to check the mail or take out the trash or do some other chore. He'd come outside every time and just stand there staring at her, saying nothing. After this, she stopped going out the front door and started going out the back whenever she had to help me in the garden or get something out of our shed or do anything really. It wasn't long before he caught on to this though, because he'd just be standing there behind the fence, staring through the gaps in the exact same way. He would literally just watch our house and wait for her to come outside all day long. She's so creeped out now that the only time she leaves the house is with friends or to go to work. She's not even comfortable standing outside anymore, and to make matters worse, he's now started coming over every other day or so to knock on our door and talk. This talk, though, is always him trying to harass me and get information about her. We've gotten to the point where we don't even answer the door because it's him so damn often. The whole thing is really creeping me out, especially because my husband is at work most of the time. I feel like I can't call the police because he hasn't technically done anything, but what should I do? I lived in an apartment a few years ago. 4 units upstairs, 4 units downstairs. I lived upstairs, and the apartment below me was supposed to be vacant. One night, though, I kept hearing footsteps throughout that apartment, and I knew I shouldn't be. Nobody was supposed to be downstairs. I asked someone else to come over and listen, just to see if I was crazy. Maybe I was just hearing the other apartments around. Since it was empty in that one, maybe everything was echoing from somewhere else. But that wasn't it. We kept hearing the footsteps together. This went on for a solid hour. Finally, I decided to call the landlord and the police. Apparently, someone had broken in through the windows downstairs and was walking back and forth through that apartment, holding a knife. Absolutely horrifying. While living with some friends, I got up late one night to get a drink of water from the kitchen. I didn't turn on any lights, having no trouble navigating in the dark. As I crossed through the living room, though, I heard some movement type of noise or something. I assumed it was one of my roommate's pet cats. Went to the kitchen, drank my water, left. On my way back through the living room, I heard those movement noises a lot louder than an old cat should be able to make. There on the couch in the very dark living room was a shape, roughly child-sized, bright red eyes staring directly at me. I froze. The fear was so sudden and strong. It's giving me goosebumps just remembering that moment now. I very slowly stepped backwards, not even daring to blink as I watched these red orbs watching me. After a few agonizingly long seconds, I readied the kitchen light switch, ready to defend myself from this mysterious goblin thing that was sure to attack me. Turned it on. It was my other roommate's chinchilla. It had somehow opened its cage and escaped from their room, and had been gnawing on random things. It was now sitting on top of a pile of laundry. That was a good scare and a funny one at the same time.